Hello and welcome to Mass Academy. In today's class, let us talk about the inclined planes. What is an inclined plane or an inclined surface? An inclined surface is a flat surface that makes an angle with horizontal. For example, this is the horizontal, right? So this direction is called horizontal. This is horizontal. Now this plane is a horizontal plane. And if we keep this now we are keeping this plane inclined, so this is an inclined surface or an inclined plane, and you can see here this surface makes an angle with the horizontal. So a surface, a flat surface that makes an angle with the horizontal is called an inclined surface or an inclined plane. So now this is an inclined plane and this is the angle this plane makes with the horizontal, and that angle is called angle of inclination theta, that we represent by the letter theta, and that angle is called angle of inclination. And we will keep an object on this inclined surface, and in today's class we will discuss about what are the forces acting on this inclined surface and how to calculate the forces acting on this object. So first we will draw a diagram of the inclined surface here. Today inclined surface, inclined plane or inclined surface. So we will draw a diagram of inclined surface here. In this diagram, this represents the horizontal. This is the horizontal. This line represents horizontal. And this is our inclined surface. This line represents inclined plane. And you can see this inclined surface, like this surface, like this. Okay, this inclined surface makes an angle. This is the angle. That angle we represent by the letter theta, and that angle is called angle of inclination, that I will write here. This theta is called angle of inclination. So what is an inclined surface? An inclined surface is a flat surface that makes an angle with the horizontal. So this is an inclined surface, and you can see a block on this inclined surface, right? So this inclined surface makes an angle with the horizontal. Then what we are doing is we will keep an object here, a wooden block for example. And the mass of the wooden block is m. M is its mass. So I will write here. Here m is the mass of the object, mass of that wooden block that kept on the inclined plane. So what are the forces acting on this object? There will be three forces acting. Now there will be three forces acting on this object. So what are those three forces acting on this object? Number one, the force of gravity, or we call the weight of the object, force of gravity, that will be acting vertically downwards. So force of gravity, that we will represent by mg, mass multiplied 9.8. So this is the weight. Force of gravity is the weight of the object. So the one of the force acting on this object is its weight. Weight always act vertically downwards. The weight of the object acts vertically downwards because it is force of gravity and earth is attracting it vertically downwards. So this is the direction of the weight. Another force acting on this object is the contact force or normal force, that we will draw here. Normal force we will represent by Fn. Fn is the normal force. So here normal force always makes an angle 90 degree with the horizontal. Okay, so with this plane inclined surface, normal force will be always perpendicular to the surface in contact. That is why it is called normal force. Normal means perpendicular. So normal force will be always perpendicular to the surface in contact. So here you can see the surface in contact is this surface, and normal force will be always 90 degree with that surface. So this is the normal force. Then the third force acting on that object is the, so here you can see if the third force is not there, it will slide down, right? This object cannot stay there, it will slide down. Why it is not sliding down? Why it is not moving down? Why the wooden block is not moving down? Because of a frictional force. That frictional force will be acting in the backward direction, and the frictional force we will represent by F for force and the small letter subscript F for friction. So this is the frictional force acting. So here there are three forces acting on an object that is kept on an inclined surface. One of the force is the weight of the object that will be acting vertically downwards. Second force is the normal force that will always act normal to the, means perpendicular to the surface in contact. So this is the surface in contact. Okay, this is the surface, and normal force will be perpendicular to the surface. Okay, then the third force, that is the frictional force. You see, in normal force, if my drawing is not perpendicular, may not be, but this must be perpendicular. Okay, then the third force is the frictional force that will be acting along this direction, and that stops this wooden block from sliding down this plane. Okay, then in sometimes, like for example, if I increase the angle, this will be sliding down, right? Then the wooden block will move down. So here what is the force acting to this side? We have studied the resolution of vectors, right? Every vector that we can divide into two components, parallel component and perpendicular component, that we have studied in vectors. It is called resolution of a vector or resolving a vector, which means we can resolve a vector. What's the meaning of resolving a vector? Resolving a vector is dividing a vector into parallel component and perpendicular component. So what are we going to do now is we will divide this weight into two components, parallel component and perpendicular component. Parallel to what? Parallel to this inclined surface, parallel to the inclined surface. So we are dividing this weight into two components. One component that is parallel to the inclined surface, parallel to this surface, and the second component that is perpendicular to the inclined surface. If this angle is theta, you know that this is 90 degree, right? This angle will be 90 degree, and the total angle of this triangle will be 180 degree. So if this angle is theta, then this angle will be 90 minus theta. If this is 90 minus theta, and you can see here this total angle, that is this angle, right? That will be 90 degree, and if this is 90 minus theta, this will be theta. Which means if this angle is theta, then this will be theta, which, for example, this is 30 degree. If this angle is 30 degree, then this will be also 30 degree. So what is this this one? That is the perpendicular component of the weight, perpendicular component of the weight that we can write, that is equal to, perpendicular component of the weight is equal to mg cos theta. Mg cos theta. What is m? M is the mass of the block, g 9.8, and cos theta, theta means this angle. the angle of inclination. And this parallel component, the parallel component of this weight, that is equal to mg sine theta. What we are dividing this weight into two components. One component that is parallel to the inclined surface, which is equal to mg sine theta, and the other component that is perpendicular to this inclined surface. Perpendicular means that component makes an angle 90 degree with the inclined surface, that is equal to mg cos theta. The next, what are the ingredients to solve the numerical problems in inclined surface? So here you can see this object, now it is at rest. Object is at rest. If an object is at rest or moving at a constant speed, then the object will be in equilibrium. Equilibrium means forces are balanced. What's the meaning of forces are balanced? Opposite forces will be equal. So first we will discuss how to calculate the normal force. How to calculate normal force. So I will write how to calculate the following. Number one is normal force. How to calculate normal force? Normal force we represent by F for force and N for normal. So normal force, that is equal to, so here you can see this object will not be accelerating up or it will not be going down to the inclined plane. So this normal force will be equal to its opposite force. Direction will be opposite but magnitude will be equal. The normal force will be always equal to, the opposite force. Which force is acting opposite to the normal force? This. Now already we divided weight, right? So this one we can remove from here because this weight is divided into its parallel component. Parallel component and perpendicular component. Now which force is acting that is opposite to the normal force? Mg cos theta. So the equation to calculate normal force is always mg cos theta. In this equation, what is m? M is the mass of the object g, 9.8, and cos, that you can just press cos in your calculator, and this theta is the angle that will be given with every question. It's called angle of inclination, that the angle this inclined surface makes with the horizontal. Then second is how to calculate the frictional force. Number two, frictional force. How to calculate the frictional force? So I will just write how to calculate friction. Friction we will represent by the letter F for force and this subscript F, simple F, that for friction. So frictional force is equal to the force which is acting opposite to friction, because now the object is in equilibrium, object is not moving. So opposite forces will be always equal. So we can write the frictional force that is equal to mg sine theta if object means the wooden block kept on the inclined plane, the object is not moving, means object is at rest or moving at a constant speed. If the object is sliding down at a constant speed, or if the object is at rest here, then the frictional force that is equal to mg sine theta, which is acting opposite to friction. Then if the object is sliding down with an acceleration, with an increasing speed, so how to calculate friction? So if the object is sliding down with an acceleration, means with an increasing speed, if the speed of the object is increasing, like for example you are sliding down, you are in a park, you are sliding down a slide in the park, so your speed will be increasing when you are sliding down. So in that case, when you are accelerating, when the object is accelerating, how to calculate friction? If the object is accelerating, then this mg sine theta will be greater, right, than friction. So we can write friction if the object is accelerating, then friction is equal to mg sine theta minus the net force. What is m? M is the mass of the object, g 9.8, sine theta, and theta is the angle, and this m is the mass and a is the acceleration of the object. So in solving questions, right, so this value of acceleration will be given in the question. So this equation you can use to calculate friction when if the object is accelerating. If the object is accelerating, then another equation, number 3, that equation is to calculate, no need to write to calculate, right? So what do we want to calculate next? Next we want to calculate the net force. If the question is to calculate net force, so yeah, net force, right, we will write net force. If you want to calculate net force we will write like this: F for force and net, F net. For net force will be equal to, if there are two forces acting in the opposite direction, then net force is the difference of the two, right? So here you have two forces acting here, like this will be always equal, right? Normal force and mg cos theta will be always equal, so they are balanced, they are already balanced, they cancelled each other. This is equal and opposite to this, so they cancelled each other. Then now there are two forces remaining, right? One is mg sine theta, and that is acting down the slope, and this one friction is acting up the slope, that is in the opposite direction. So what is the net force? Net force will be equal to mg sine theta minus minus the opposite force. Opposite force is force of friction, right? So force of friction we will write like this. So this is equal to mg sine theta. In most of the question, friction will not be given. Instead of that, the coefficient of friction will be given. So usually in the questions, the coefficient of friction will be given, the frictional force is not given. In such case, how to calculate friction, or what is the equation for friction? Friction is mu multiplied the normal force, mu multiplied normal force, Fn. What is normal force? Normal force is equal to mg cos theta. So mu is the coefficient of friction, mg cos theta. So this is the equation for friction. Okay, so I have given here 4 equations. Okay, 4 equations. First one is to calculate the normal force. Normal force is equal to mg cos theta. And second one is to calculate the frictional force if the object is at rest or it is sliding down at a constant speed, then friction is equal to mg sine theta. Third equation, if the object is accelerating down, then what is the value of the friction? That is, if it is accelerating down, then friction is equal to mg sine theta minus net force acting on the object. And the fourth equation, if it is accelerating down, so how to calculate the net force acting on the object? Net force is equal to mg sine theta minus friction. So friction will not be given in the question usually, so you need to calculate the friction also. You can calculate friction using the equation coefficient of friction multiplied mg cos theta. This mu represents the coefficient of friction. So these are the 4 equations, and there is another chance they may ask to calculate the net force. Okay, they usually ask to calculate the acceleration. If the question is to calculate acceleration, how to calculate acceleration? To calculate acceleration, the equation is net force divided by mass. So if the question is to calculate acceleration, first you need to calculate net force. How? Using this equation. Use this equation. First you calculate net force, then you divide the net force by mass of the object, mass of this block here. So you will get the acceleration of the object. And another question they usually ask is to calculate the coefficient of friction. So how to calculate coefficient of friction? If the question is to calculate coefficient of friction, the equation is To calculate coefficient of friction, the frictional force divided by normal force. Okay, normal force. So here normal force is mg cos theta, right? So I will write mg cos theta. So if the question is to calculate the coefficient of friction, the only method is first you need to calculate friction using this equation. Use this equation or this one. Okay, either. Calculate friction. When will you use this equation? This equation you can use if the object is at rest or sliding down at a steady speed. Steady speed means constant speed. And the second equation you can use if the object is accelerating down. So if the question is to calculate coefficient of friction, first you calculate friction by using either of these two equations. Then after that, divide the value of friction by the normal force mg cos theta. Now let us solve, or let us discuss how to solve questions from this topic, the inclined surface, how to calculate the forces acting on an object that's kept on an inclined surface. So first question, a 562 Newton crate is resting on a plane, on an inclined plane that is inclined at an angle 30 degree above the horizontal. So here we have an inclined surface. So this is horizontal and this is inclined surface, and this angle of inclination that is given in the question, angle of inclination is 30 degree, and here there is a crate. A crate is here. So the weight of the crate is given. The weight of the crate is 562 Newton. Weight means mg. If the mass is given, you need to multiply by 9.8. It is actually weight of the object is given. That you can understand from here, like from the unit. Okay, they will not state whether it is weight or whether it is mass of the object. For example, if it is given like a 52 kilogram object, then that is the mass. How to identify whether it is mass or weight given in the question? From the unit. If the unit is kilogram, that is the mass of the object, and if the unit is Newton, that is the weight of the object. So a 562 Newton, so 562 is the weight of the object, 562 Newton. Weight means mass multiplied g, right? So mg, so I am writing mg is equal to 562 Newton. It is resting on a plane that is inclined at an angle 30 degrees. So the angle theta that is equal to 30 degree, angle theta equals 30 degree. Find the components of crate's weight that are parallel and perpendicular to the plane. So we need to calculate the component of the weight, the parallel component of the weight and perpendicular component of the weight. So first we will calculate the parallel component of the weight. What's the equation to calculate parallel component of the weight? Parallel component will be along this direction and perpendicular component will be along this direction. So parallel component that we have written mg sin theta, and perpendicular component is mg cos theta. I have given all the equations here to the right side of this board. So parallel component, that is mg sin theta. So here mg is given 562. If suppose only the mass is given, for example, if it is given a 60 kilogram object, then what you need to do? 60 multiplied 9.8. Here weight is given 562. So instead of mg, we will substitute 562 multiplied sine, and what's the angle? 30 degree, right? Sine 30. Then you take your calculator. Sine 30, the value of sine 30 is actually 0.5. So 562 multiplied sine 30, I'm getting 281. You will also get 281 when you calculate. So 281 Newton is the answer for this question. And how to calculate the perpendicular component? Just write perpendicular. What's the equation? mg cos theta. Do the same thing. mg is 562 multiplied cos angle 30 degree. So 562 multiplied cos 30, it's equal to 487 Newton. I actually got for 486.7, so we rounded to the next digit, 487. The second question we have is Ali, whose mass is 43 kilogram. So I will write what's given in the question first. So Ali, his mass is equal to 43 kilogram. 43 kilogram is his mass. Slides down at a steady speed on an inclined surface which makes an angle 35 degree with horizontal. So angle theta, that is 35 degree. Calculate the normal force acting on Ali. So this is the inclined surface and this angle is 35 degree and Ali is here. Ali's mass is 43 kilogram. So he is sliding down. We need to calculate the normal force. Normal force will be always acting normal to the surface, so normal force, and his weight will be acting, frictional force will be acting to this side, right? And the component of the weight will be acting, this is mg sine theta, and the perpendicular component will be acting like this, mg cos theta. So you need to calculate the normal force acting on Ali. Normal force will be always equal to the perpendicular component of the weight, that is normal force is always equal to mg cos theta. Ali's mass is 43 kilogram, so only mass is given, so 43 multiplied. G, what's the value of G? G is 9.8. If the weight is given, you don't have to multiply by 9.8, and cos, the angle is 35 degrees, so cos 35, that's equal to equals 43 multiplied 9.8 multiplied cosine 35, 345. So the answer is 345 Newton is the answer to that question. Third question, if the acceleration of the block in the diagram below is 5 meter per second squared, what is the coefficient of kinetic friction? So accelerating means the object is moving. If the object is moving, the friction is called kinetic friction. So you need to calculate friction in this question. So here in the question a figure is given, that is like this, and this angle of inclination that is given in the question is 60 degree. 60 degree. So in the question it is given in the other way. So I will draw like the what's given in the question like this. It's given the diagram. So yeah, otherwise you will get confused. So 60 degree here, the angle 60 degree, and here is our object. So the mass of the object is 20 kilogram. 20 kilogram is the mass of the object. I will write here mass of the object is 20 kilogram, and the angle of inclination, that is 60 degree. And one more thing given, that is acceleration is given. Acceleration is equal to 5 meter per second squared. So if acceleration is given in a question, that will be always given in this unit, meter per second squared. So if you see a number with this unit, meter per second squared, that is acceleration in any question. So what is the coefficient of kinetic friction? We need to calculate the coefficient of friction. So to calculate coefficient of friction, I told you first you need to calculate friction. That is the only method to calculate coefficient of friction. If the question is to calculate coefficient of friction, the equation is friction divided by the normal force. Friction divided by normal force. So first you need to calculate friction. So if the object is accelerating, what is the equation to calculate friction? If the object is accelerating, you can use this equation to calculate friction. So we will write that equation here. Friction is equal to mg sine theta minus net force, that is ma. So what is m? M is the mass of the object, that is 20, g 9.8, and the sine angle is 65, right? Sine 65 minus, again mass is 20 multiplied acceleration is 5. 20 multiplied 9.8 multiplied sine 60 minus 20 multiplied 5. So 69.7 Newton, that is the value of the frictional force. Now you need to calculate the coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction mu. Coefficient of friction is frictional force divided by the normal force. Normal force will be always equal to mg cos theta, right? Normal force is mg cos theta. So we will write like that, mg cos theta. So what's the value of friction? Well, value of friction is 69.7 over mg cos theta. M is 20 multiplied g is 9.8 multiplied cos, angle is 60. So 69.7 divided by 20 multiplied 9.8 multiplied cosine 60. So the answer is 0.71. 0.71 is the value of the coefficient of friction here. Coefficient of friction has no unit. Why? Because it is the ratio of two forces. You can see here, coefficient of friction is force of friction divided by normal force. What's the unit of friction? Newton. Unit of normal force also Newton. So this Newton and Newton will be cancelled. So coefficient of friction has no unit. So it's a dimensionless or unitless quantity. So if any quantity that is the ratio of same quantities like force divided by force, so it will not have unit, okay, like that. So the coefficient of friction has no unit. The reason is it is the ratio of two forces. So units will be cancelled from the numerator and denominator. Ahmed, the next question, okay, next question. Ahmed, who has a mass of 48 kilogram. So Ahmed's mass is 48 kilogram. Mass equal to 48 kilogram. He is going down a slide making an angle 29 degree with the horizontal. So he is going down a slide like this. So this angle is 29 degree and Ahmed is here. So this is Ahmed. The angle that is equal to 29 degree. The coefficient of friction is given, that is mu is given. Coefficient of friction is 0.23. Calculate net force acting on Ahmed and calculate his acceleration. So we need to calculate F net force, then we need to calculate acceleration also. So how to calculate net force? The equation to calculate net force is F net, that equal to mg sine theta, means net force is the difference of opposite forces, right? So here opposite forces, this one and frictional force. This is mg sine theta minus force of friction. So mg sine theta, m is how much? M is 48 multiplied g 9.8 multiplied sine, what's the angle? Angle is 29, right? Minus force of friction. So what's the equation for force of friction? Force of friction will be mu, that is coefficient of friction, multiplied mg cos theta. Coefficient of friction is 0.23 multiplied m. What's mass? Mass is 48, right? 48 g 9.8 multiplied cos, the angle 29, cos 29. So when you calculate this, 48 multiplied 9.8 multiplied sine 29 minus 0.23 multiplied 48 multiplied 9.8 times cos 29. Net force is 133.4 Newton. Newton is the unit of force. And you need to calculate acceleration also. So in some questions they will directly ask you to calculate acceleration without calculating the net force. So to calculate acceleration, first you need to calculate net force. Okay, so the only way to calculate acceleration in this type of question is net force divided by mass. Okay, acceleration is equal to net force divided by mass. So to calculate acceleration, whether they ask to calculate net force or not, first you need to calculate the net force. So acceleration, that is equal to net force divided by mass. How much is net force? 133.4 divided by mass of the object. How much is mass of Ahmed? that is 48 kilogram, right? So divided by 48, his acceleration will be equal to 133.4 divided by 48 equals 2.77. So I will write 2.8 meter per second squared, 2.8 meter per second squared. So thank you all my friends for watching this video, and I request you to subscribe my channel